I never imagined the sound of a deadbolt turning would feel like relief instead of loss. 3 weeks before my son's wedding, he told me, apologetically, like he was reading from a script someone else had written, that I wasn't welcome at the ceremony. And by the time that wedding was supposed to happen, I was 3 states away, standing in a lake up to my knees, not thinking about it at all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. My name's Walt. I'm 64 years old, and for most of my adult life, I was the man my family called when something went wrong. A busted water heater, a car that wouldn't turn over, rent that came up short 2 months in a row. I was the fix. I didn't mind it, not really. I'd tell you I liked being needed. I'd tell you that's just what fathers do. I believed that for a long, long time. My wife passed 8 years ago. Since then, it's just been me, my son Nathaniel, Nate, he goes by, and my daughter Sasha. Nate's 32, works in marketing downtown, always dressed like he's about to walk into a meeting even on a Sunday. Sasha's 28, an ER nurse, doesn't own a single item of clothing that isn't scrubs or running gear. Different as they come, those two. But they're mine, and I raised them the same way. To work hard, to be honest, and to never let anybody make them feel small. Funny thing is, I never thought I'd be the one somebody tried to make feel small, especially not my own son. Nate had been dating Andrea Whitfield for about 2 years. Her family owns a chain of boutique hotels, the kind with valet parking and a lobby that smells like eucalyptus. Nice enough people, on the surface. Andrea's mother always had a firm handshake and a tight smile for me at the one dinner we shared. I noticed the way her eyes moved over my hands, still rough from 34 years running construction crews, like she was doing math she didn't like the answer to. I told myself I was imagining it. I wasn't. 4 weeks before the wedding, Nate asked if we could talk. Just the two of us, out on my back porch, where I'd built the railing myself the summer Sasha turned 16. He had that look on his face, the one he used to get as a kid, right before admitting he'd dented the car. "Dad," he said, "there's something about the wedding I need to bring up." I told him to go ahead. Andrea's parents have some concerns about the guest list, about the image of it. They've got business partners flying in, investors, people they need to impress. He wouldn't look at me while he said it. They think it'd be better if you weren't at the ceremony, or the rehearsal dinner. I sat with that for a second. Better for who? For everybody. It's not personal, Dad, it's just, he rubbed the back of his neck, a habit he's had since he was 6. You know how you can be. Blunt, set in your ways. They're worried you'll say something that embarrasses them in front of the wrong people. There it was. 32 years of being his father, and what he saw when he pictured his own wedding day was a liability standing in a rented suit, threatening to ruin things by simply existing. I understand, I told him. He exhaled, like I'd lifted something off his chest. Really? Thank you, Dad. I knew you'd get it. He reached over and squeezed my shoulder. I let him. Then he stood up, said he had to get back, and left me alone on the porch I'd built with my own 2 hands, listening to the sound of his car pulling out of the driveway. I want to be honest with you. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I sat there for a long while, and then I went inside and did something I hadn't planned on doing an hour earlier. Nate and I had opened a joint account 8 months back, specifically for wedding costs. I'd put in a substantial amount, proceeds from selling my old work truck, a chunk of the pension I'd been saving since before he was born. It was supposed to be my gift to him, but a gift is something you choose to give, not something you're obligated to hand over to people who've just told you you're not fit to stand in the room. I logged in. I moved every dollar I'd contributed back into my own account. Then I called the bank and had myself removed from the joint account entirely. Took less than 20 minutes. That night, I pulled a duffel bag out of the hall closet and packed like a man who'd made up his mind. Flannel shirts, fishing gear, the paperback I'd been meaning to finish for 2 years. I'd found a cabin listing on a lake in the Ozarks the week before. On a whim, never thinking I'd actually book it. I booked it that night. The next morning, I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just left. By the time I stopped for gas 2 hours out, my phone was already buzzing. I didn't look at it. I drove 11 hours straight, and when I pulled up to that cabin, the lake was so still it looked painted on. I stood on the dock for a long time before I even brought my bags inside. For the first 2 days, I didn't turn my phone back on at all. I fished in the mornings, read on the porch in the afternoons, and slept better than I had in years. On the third morning, I finally switched it on, and the screen filled up all at once. 14 missed calls, voicemails stacked one on top of another. The first was calm. "Dad, the venue's saying the deposit card got declined. Can you call me back?" The second wasn't. "Dad, this isn't funny. The wedding's in 3 weeks. What did you do to the account?" The third was barely words at all, just his voice cracking. "You emptied it. You actually emptied it." I didn't call back. Instead, I typed one message. "I told you I understood. I also decided I wouldn't fund an event I'm not welcome at. The money's back in my savings. You and Andrea will need to cover the rest." I sent it, set the phone face down on the porch railing, and went back to my coffee. An hour later, Sasha called. Unlike her brother, Sasha's never needed anything from anybody, never has, never will. "Dad, where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart, fishing." She laughed, short and surprised. "Nate's losing his mind. Andrea's parents are furious. Vendors are calling him non-stop. That sounds like something he and Andrea need to work out." A pause. Then quieter. "Good. I mean it, Dad. Good for you." 3 weeks passed the way weeks do when you're not checking your phone every 5 minutes. Quickly, and without much fanfare. On the day the wedding was supposed to happen, I was standing in that lake with my pants rolled up to my knees, half paying attention to my line, half just listening to the water. My phone rang around sundown. Sasha again. "Dad, the wedding's off." I sat down on a rock. "What happened?" She told me it fell apart in pieces. Andrea's father cornering the photographer, trying to talk him into cutting his rate, the photographer walking, Nate finding out and confronting Andrea's family in front of half the guest list, somebody's mother saying something cruel enough that voices started carrying across the reception hall. And then Andrea, humiliated, telling Nate she couldn't marry someone whose family caused this kind of scene, and walking out with her parents behind her. "He's asking where you are," Sasha said. "I'm not coming back tonight." I figured. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. Nate's name on the screen. I let it ring twice before I answered. "Dad." His voice was wrecked. "Everything's ruined. Andrea left. The venue wants their money. The caterer's threatening legal action. It's almost $30,000, Dad. I don't have it." I waited. "You have the money. You need to send it." I actually laughed, though there wasn't anything funny about it. "You're asking me to pay for the wedding you told me I wasn't allowed to attend. That's not—" I didn't mean it like that. I was under pressure. So am I, apparently. His voice cracked again, and then it turned. "I'm coming to the house tonight. I've still got a key." "Not for long, you don't." That night I called a locksmith 2 towns over from my place and asked him to change every exterior lock on my property. Then I called Sasha and asked her to meet him there. She didn't ask a single question, just said she'd handle it. A few hours later she sent me a photo, a brand new set of keys sitting on my kitchen table, catching the light. I looked at that picture longer than I probably needed to. The next afternoon, I flew home. Sasha picked me up, and neither of us said much until we turned onto my street and saw Nate's car parked crooked at the curb, trunk open, 2 suitcases dumped on my front porch. He was sitting on the steps in the same rumpled shirt he'd probably worn since the night before. He stood the second he saw me. "Finally, I've been out here for hours." I walked past him and tried my key in the door, out of old habit, then remembered. "Locks are new. You changed them? On me? I told you not to come here. I'm your son, Dad. This is my house too. It was never your house, Nate. It's mine." He threw his hands up. "I just lost everything. I'm drowning in debt and you're treating me like a stranger. I didn't create your situation. You're supposed to help me. I did help you. For 32 years I helped you." I kept my voice level. It cost me something to do it, but I managed. "This time, you're going to have to help yourself." His anger drained out of him all at once, the way it used to when he was a boy, and realized crying wasn't going to get him what he wanted. "Dad, please. I don't have anywhere to go." "You'll find somewhere. I can't afford a hotel." "That's not something I can solve for you." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. You have savings. You could take a loan against the house. You're older. You don't need all that equity just sitting there. Something in me went very quiet and very still. He wasn't asking because he missed me. He was asking because he'd run out of things to sell. Listen to me carefully, I said. I'm not mortgaging this house. I'm not taking out a loan. I'm not touching my retirement. And I'm not sacrificing my future to shield you from consequences you built yourself. His mouth opened, but I kept going. Sasha and I already moved the house into a protected trust. It can't be used as collateral for anything. Not for your debts, not for anyone's. He stared at me like I'd started speaking a language he didn't recognize. You did that without telling me. I didn't need your permission. He looked at the new lock, then at me, and for the first time in a long while, I don't think he saw the same father he expected to find standing there. He picked up one of his suitcases and set it back down, like he didn't know what to do with his own hands. So what am I supposed to do? Find a solution, I said. The way the rest of us have to. He laughed, bitter and short. Easy for you to say. It wasn't easy for me to learn either. I let that sit. You can call people. See what you can put together. He did. Right there on the porch, in front of me and Sasha. The venue, a former coworker, a friend I didn't recognize the name of. Every call ended the same way. Nobody could produce $30,000 on short notice. By the time he'd worked through his list, the fight had gone out of him completely. Andrea hasn't answered any of my texts, he said quietly. I didn't respond. I thought marrying into that family would change things for me. He wouldn't look up. I was ashamed of where I came from, Dad. I'm sorry. I almost told him he never needed their acceptance to begin with. But I stopped myself. Some things a father can say 100 times, and it won't land until his sons lived through the alternative. Can I stay one night? He asked. No. The word cost me more than I let on. But I'd learned that if I gave in now, none of it would have meant anything. He gathered his suitcases. Sasha helped him load the car without a word. Before he pulled away, he rolled down the window. I hope you're happy, he said. I am, I told him. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, that was true. I watched his car disappear around the corner, and only then did I let myself sit down on the porch steps and cry. Not because I regretted anything, but because I wished none of it had needed to happen in the first place. The following week, Andrea's father showed up at my door in a suit that probably cost more than my truck. I kept the chain on and opened it just enough to see him. Where's Nathaniel? He asked, like he had any right to ask me anything. Not here. Your son owes half the cancellation fees. We'd like this handled. You'll want to take that up with him. His jaw tightened. Your family put my daughter through a humiliating scene. Your family decided I wasn't fit to be in the room for my son's wedding, I said. You don't get to lecture me about humiliation. He didn't have much of an answer for that. He muttered something about families needing to be responsible and walked back to his car. I closed the door and didn't think about him again. That evening, the messages started. An aunt, a cousin, an old friend of my late wife's, all of them repeating some version of the same line. Family should stick together when things get hard. I read a few, then muted the whole chain. I'd spent too much of my life trying to explain myself to people who'd already made up their minds. I wasn't doing it anymore. Instead, I sat out back with a glass of iced tea and just listened. Birds, wind moving through the trees I'd planted the year Sasha was born. No emergencies, no phone ringing, just quiet. Weeks passed. Sasha told me Nate had moved into a shared apartment and picked up work at a hardware store downtown. I didn't ask for details, and I didn't chase them down myself. I started fixing up the garden I'd let go to weeds for years. I went fishing most weekends. My days got smaller in some ways, and a whole lot bigger in the ways that mattered. Then, about 2 months in, a message came through from him. Just one line. Dad, I know you're angry. I really need you. I read it twice, set the phone face down on the table, and kept watering the tomatoes. Old me would have had my keys in hand before I finished reading it. This time, I just let it sit. A few days later, a longer message came. He apologized. Not for the money this time, but for the wedding. For choosing Andrea's family's comfort over mine. for years of assuming I'd always be there to catch whatever he dropped. No ask attached to it, no mention of the house, just regret, plain and unpadded. I still didn't answer right away. An apology can be real. It can also be a door left open for old habits to walk back through. I needed time to know which one this was. A week later, he called. I let it ring twice before I picked up. "Dad?" His voice was steadier than I'd heard it in months. "I was wrong. About all of it." "I know," I said. "I thought if I became part of their world, everything would finally feel like enough. I was ashamed of you. That's the truth. And I hate that it's the truth. That one stung," I admitted. "But I appreciate you saying it out loud." There was a long quiet on the line. Then, "Can I see you?" "Yes," I said. "Somewhere neutral. And we're not talking about money." "Okay. And you're not moving back in." Another pause, softer this time. "Okay, Dad." We met that Saturday at a diner near my place. I got there early, took a booth by the window. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. No blazer, no styled hair, just a tired man in a plain jacket who looked more like the kid I remembered than the one who'd sat across from me on my porch 2 months earlier. "Thanks for coming," he said, sliding into the booth. "You're welcome." He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup, the way he used to as a boy trying to keep warm. "I don't want your money," he said. "I don't want the house. I don't want you to fix anything for me. I just want my father back." I looked at him for a long moment. "Then we start slow. I understand. And it's not going back to how it was." "I know," he said. "Because of the locks. Because of everything." He nodded, and something in his face settled, like he'd been bracing for me to say something worse. I reached across the table and put my hand over his. "I love you, Nate. That never stopped." His eyes went glassy. "I know I don't deserve. Loving you doesn't mean I have to destroy myself for you," I said. That's the part I finally learned. We sat there almost 2 hours, talking about nothing important. His new job, my garden, Sasha's ridiculous work schedule. It was the most ordinary conversation we'd had in years, and somehow it meant more than every crisis I'd ever solved for him. When we stood to leave, he hugged me, and this time I hugged him back. He asked, almost shy about it, if he could come by the house sometime. "Of course," I said. "Just call first." He laughed. Really laughed, for the first time in months. "I will." That evening, I drove home and stood on my porch for a while before going in. I looked at the new locks on the door, plain pieces of brass that had cost me $40 and meant a great deal more than that. They weren't there to punish my son. They were there to remind me that this house, this life, was mine to protect, and that loving somebody doesn't mean handing them the only thing you have left standing. I went inside, watered the tomatoes, and left the windows open to the evening air. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt completely at home in my own life. I hadn't abandoned my son. I'd simply stopped abandoning myself.